My name is Brianna, and for most of my life, I thought the sound of an alarm clock at 5 in the morning was just the sound of being useful. Not tired, not mistreated, not forgotten. Useful. That was the word Mrs. Patterson liked to use when she wanted to make something cruel sound polite. She had a real gift for that. Some women collect porcelain angels. Donna Patterson collected soft words for ugly things. I was 23 years old, but I had the daily schedule of a live-in maid, a short-order cook, a laundry service, and a nervous church mouse all rolled into one. Every morning, before the sun even bothered to show up, I would climb off the thin mattress in the basement, fold the old blanket at the foot of it, and listen for the furnace kicking on 3 feet from my head. That furnace was the closest thing I had to a roommate. It groaned, rattled, and blew hot air like it had opinions about my life. Honestly, it had more personality than my father, or the man I thought was my father. The basement was not what anyone with a straight face would call a bedroom. It had a concrete floor, one metal shelf, a laundry sink with a cracked mirror above it, and a smell that never quite left, no matter how much bleach I used. In winter, it was cold enough that I slept in socks and a sweater. In summer, the air got thick and damp, and my pillows smelled like old cardboard. Upstairs, of course, was a different country. The Patterson house sat in Fairfield County, Connecticut, on a quiet street where every lawn looked like it had been combed by hand. The houses had white columns, neat hedges, big windows, and driveways filled with cars that cost more than most folks made in a year. From the sidewalk, our house looked like the American dream had put on a navy blazer and joined a country club. Inside, it was beautiful. I knew that better than anyone, because I cleaned every inch of it. The kitchen had Italian marble counters Mrs. Patterson loved to brag about when her friends came over. She called it calicata, stretching the word out like she had personally discovered Italy. I polished that marble every day until I could have drawn the gray veins from memory. The refrigerator was one of those huge stainless steel Sub-Zero models, the kind you open and expect a chef to step out holding a tray of appetizers. The stove was a Viking range. 6 burners. Double oven. More power than any stove needed unless you were feeding a football team. Most mornings, I started there. By 5:15, I was wiping down counters, grinding coffee beans, pulling eggs, bacon, butter, and orange juice from the refrigerator. Mr. Patterson wanted his breakfast ready by 7 sharp, not 7:05, not 7:10, 7. He believed punctuality was a virtue, mostly because he was never the one doing the work. Gerald Patterson came downstairs every morning with the Wall Street Journal tucked under his arm, his watch flashing on his wrist, and the expression of a man deeply disappointed that other people continued to exist around him. He would sit in the leather chair by the breakfast nook and open the paper before saying a word to me. Coffee. That was usually it. One word. No good morning. No thank you. No. Brianna. Did you sleep well down there next to the furnace like a potato in storage? Just coffee. I poured it into the good mug, the one with the thin gold rim, and set it beside him. If the coffee was too weak, he said so. If it was too strong, he said so. If it was right, he said nothing, which in the Patterson home counted as a standing ovation. Mrs. Patterson came down later, always wrapped in some robe that looked too expensive to absorb water. Donna was the kind of woman who could make holding a magazine look like community service. She had soft blonde hair, carefully painted nails, and a smile she used in public like a nice set of silverware. At home, that smile usually stayed in the drawer. She checked everything. The counters, the floor, the table settings, the napkins, the fruit bowl. Brianna. The bananas are bruised. As if I had taken them out back and insulted them personally. Yes. Mrs. Patterson. Brianna. The eggs are too firm? Yes. Mrs. Patterson. Brianna. The table looks dull. The table was mahogany. I had polished it the night before, until I could see my own tired face in it. But arguing with Donna Patterson was like trying to teach a cat to apologize. It wasted time and ended badly. Then there was Brandon. Brandon Patterson. The golden son. The miracle child. The young prince of the second floor. His bedroom was bigger than my basement space. And unlike mine, it came with windows, carpet, heat that did not sound like a dying truck, and a bed large enough to host a small town meeting. He had a television mounted on the wall, game systems, designer sneakers lined up in his closet, and a bathroom nobody else was allowed to use. He usually slept until noon when he could get away with it. When he came downstairs, he never looked around to see who had made the food, washed his clothes, or cleaned up the mess he left behind. Things simply appeared for Brandon. Clean shirts, hot meals, fresh towels, gas in the car, a life with no fingerprints on it except mine. Brianna? Where's my blue shirt? In the laundry room, folded on the counter. Can you bring it up? He would be standing at the top of the stairs, perfectly capable of walking down himself. But why use your own legs when someone else had been trained to use hers? So I brought it up. Brandon was not loud like Gerald or sharp like Donna. That made it harder. In a way. He did not scream at me. He did not threaten me. He simply treated me like part of the house. A person-shaped appliance. If he needed coffee, he called me. If his room was messy, he called me. If his friends were coming over, he told me to make snacks and stay out of sight. When his buddies from school came by, all clean haircuts and expensive cologne, they asked about me sometimes. Who's that? Brandon would shrug. Our housekeeper. Not my sister. Not even Brianna. Housekeeper. And I stood there holding a tray of sodas and chips, pretending the word did not land right in the center of my chest. For a long time, I told myself it was normal. Maybe not normal for everyone, but normal for me. That is what happens when you grow up inside a locked room and people keep calling it home. You stop asking why the walls are there. You start arranging your life around them. I did not go to school like Brandon did. He attended a private academy that cost more each year than I could imagine. He had uniforms, textbooks, teachers, coaches, college counselors, and parents who clapped at his games. I stayed home. Mrs. Patterson told the neighbors I was homeschooled because I was sensitive. That was another one of her words. Sensitive meant hidden. The truth was, nobody taught me much of anything. I learned to read from magazines Donna threw away and old paperbacks from a donation box she forgot to take to church. I learned math by counting grocery change and measuring flour. I learned history from television when the family was out and forgot to lock the remote cabinet. That was my education. Not exactly Harvard. But I did learn one thing well. Rich people can make almost anything sound respectable if they say it with good posture. I did not have a driver's license. I did not have a social security card. I had never seen my birth certificate. When I asked about it once, Mrs. Patterson said there had been a fire and my documents were lost. A fire where? I asked. She looked at me so coldly, I wished I had swallowed the question. It is complicated. Brianna, you would not understand. That was the end of it. By the time I was old enough to realize other young women had jobs, friends, bank accounts, phones, dates, college applications, and lives that stretched beyond the laundry room, I already knew better than to ask for any of those things. Asking led to lectures. Lectures led to punishments. Punishments led back to the basement. So I worked. I cleaned bathrooms with toothbrushes. I scrubbed baseboards. I folded sheets into tight squares because Donna said loose folds showed poor character. I made dinner and stood in the kitchen. While the three of them ate in the dining room under a chandelier, I dusted every Friday. The table had 6 chairs. I counted them often, but only 3 were ever used. Once? When I was younger, I asked if I could sit with them. Donna laughed like I had made a cute little joke. Oh, Brianna, she said, patting my cheek. The table is for family. That was when I learned the truth without anyone saying it clearly. I lived in the Patterson house. But I was not a Patterson. I wore their old clothes, cooked their meals, cleaned their messes, and answered when they called. But I did not belong to them, in the way children are supposed to belong to their parents. I belonged the way a broom belongs in a closet. Useful, available, and best kept out of sight when company came over. Still, I believed what they told me. I believed I owed them gratitude. I believed I was lucky to have a roof over my head. Even if that roof was above a basement, with a furnace beside my mattress. I believed Brandon deserved more because he was Brandon. And I deserved less because I was me. That is the most dangerous kind of lie. Not the loud one shouted in your face. The quiet one repeated every day, until it starts using your own voice. By the time I understood that lie had been planted in me, it had already grown roots in every corner of my life. The Patterson house had rules, not the normal kind. Like, take your shoes off at the door, or do not leave wet towels on the floor. Those would have been almost charming. No. Gerald Patterson believed rules should feel like handcuffs, only cheaper. When I was 5, he wrote them on an index card in black ink and taped it to the inside of my basement door. He called them family rules, which was funny in the same way. A parking ticket is funny when you are already broke. Rule 1. I did not sit at the family table. Rule 2. I did not call Gerald and Donna Mom or Dad. I was to call them Mr. Clan, Patterson and Mrs. Patterson. Rule 3. I did not leave the house without permission. Rule 4. I did not speak to strangers. Rule 5. I did not ask questions about things that did not concern me. That last one covered almost everything. My own birthday, for example, did not concern me. My school records did not concern me. My medical records did not concern me. My social security number, birth certificate, and any document that might have proved I existed in the eyes of the government did not concern me. It is amazing how much of your life people can steal when they first convince you that you have no right to ask for it. I slept in the basement until I was 23. Not for a few months during a renovation. Not because the house was crowded. The Patterson home had 4 bedrooms upstairs, and a guest room that was used maybe twice a year when Donna's sister visited and complained about the mattress. I slept below ground because that was where they said I belonged. My mattress sat against the far wall, near the furnace. There was no window, no closet, no dresser. I kept my clothes in plastic storage bins, the kind people use for Christmas ornaments and old tax papers. I owned 3 dresses, 2 pairs of shoes, a winter coat from Donna's donation pile, and a sweater with a stain on the sleeve that no amount of scrubbing could remove. The bathroom I used was the laundry sink. That sounds dramatic, but it is the truth. I brushed my teeth there. I washed my face there. On good days, I was allowed to use the downstairs powder room before guests came over, as long as I wiped it down afterward, so no one could tell I had touched it. Donna had a talent for making me feel like a fingerprint. Meanwhile, Brandon had a room upstairs with bay windows that looked over the backyard. His bed had a headboard taller than me. His closet had lights inside it. His bathroom had heated tile floors. Because apparently his feet had been through enough hardship. I cleaned that bathroom every Saturday morning. I knew every bottle on his counter. Désigné Cologne. Expensive hair gel. Whitening toothpaste. Face wash that cost more than the groceries I was allowed to buy for myself. He would leave wet towels on the floor and toothpaste in the sink. Then walk out, like the cleanup fairy had a union contract and benefits. That fairy was me. Breakfast was the first shift. Laundry was the second. Bathrooms. Dusting. Grocery lists. Lunch prep. Dinner prep. Dishes. Trash. Ironing. Vacuuming. Mopping. Organizing. Polishing. The day was never finished. It only paused long enough for me to sleep a few hours and start again. If I did something wrong, Gerald noticed. If I did something right, nobody did. That was the system. Gerald was not a man who raised his voice often. He did not need to. His voice was low, clipped, and cold. The kind of voice that made a room shrink around you. He worked in finance, or at least that was how Donna described it. I never knew exactly what he did. I only knew he wore suits, read the Wall Street Journal, and talked about money like it was a religion where he was both priest and collection plate. He had a way of looking at me that made me feel like I had tracked mud across his life. Brianna, he would say from the dining room. That single word could mean anything. The coffee was wrong. The floor had a streak. Brandon needed something. Donna was displeased. A guest had asked a question and I needed to disappear. I learned to read the house by sound. The click of Donna's heels meant inspection. Gerald clearing his throat meant trouble. Brandon slamming a drawer meant I would soon be blamed for whatever he could not find. A car pulling into the driveway meant I had seconds to move out of sight if company was coming. When neighbors visited, I became the help, not always out loud. Rich people do not always say the ugly thing directly. They raise an eyebrow. They ask, "Is she with you?" They glance at your clothes, your hands, your posture, and they understand where you are supposed to stand. Donna helped them understand. "She's shy," she would say with a little laugh. "She helps around the house. She prefers to stay busy." That last one was my favorite. I did not prefer to stay busy. I preferred not to be punished. Big difference. Though I admit it does not fit as nicely on a holiday card. I was not allowed to go outside alone except for errands, Donna approved. Grocery store. Farmace. Dry cleaner. Sometimes the post office. Even then, she timed me. If the store was 3 miles away and I came home 10 minutes later than expected, she wanted an explanation. "Were you talking to someone?" "No. Mrs. Patterson." "Did anyone ask about us?" "No. Mrs. Patterson." "Did you embarrass this family?" "No. Mrs. Patterson." I was much too trained for that. The strangest part was that people saw me all the time and still did not see me. Cashiers saw me buying groceries with exact lists. Dry cleaners saw me picking up Gerald's shirts. Delivery drivers saw me signing for packages at the back door. Neighbors saw me carrying trash bins to the curb before sunrise. No one asked why a young woman with no car, no school, no friends, and no life was always working inside that house. Or maybe they did wonder. Maybe wondering was just easier than getting involved. That is something I have thought about a lot since then. In nice neighborhoods, people do not always ignore suffering because they are cruel. Sometimes they ignore it because the lawn is trimmed, the driveway is clean, and the family Christmas card looks normal. A pretty house can hide a lot. So can a polite smile. When I was 12, I asked Donna why I could not go to school. I remember that afternoon clearly, because she was sitting at the kitchen island, flipping through a catalog and circling things she wanted, but did not need. I had just finished folding Brandon's uniforms. His school crest was stitched on every shirt. Navy and gold. Proud and official. "Mrs. Patterson," I said. She did not look up. "What? Could I go to school too?" Her pen stopped moving. The room went quiet in that dangerous way. I knew too well. "You are homeschooled?" she said. "No one teaches me." Now she looked up. Her face did not change much, but her eyes did. They went flat. "You learn what you need to learn." I should have stopped there. I knew that. Every part of me knew that. But I was 12. And sometimes hope makes you stupid. Sweet. Brave. Completely stupid. "I want to learn more." Donna closed the catalog. "Brianna, school is not for everyone." "Why is it for Brandon?" The slap came fast enough that I did not see her hand move until my cheek was already burning. I stood there, frozen, with Brandon's folded shirts pressed against my chest. "Do not compare yourself to my son," she said. "My son. Not your brother. Not Brandon. My son." That was one of those little moments that should have opened my eyes. But back then, I only lowered my head and apologized. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson." She picked up her pen and went back to circling lamps. "That's better." And just like that, my future was folded smaller and placed back on the shelf. I learned to keep my wants quiet. A person can survive without many things if she is trained early enough. I survived without school, without friends, without birthdays that felt like birthdays, without family dinners, without anyone asking what I wanted to be when I grew up. No one asked, because no one expected me to grow into anything. To them, I was already finished. Useful, available, silent, and the worst part is, For many years, I believed that was the best I could ever hope to be. I got very good at making myself smaller. Because in that house, small was safe. Small meant I did not take up a chair. Small meant I did not ask why Brandon had a tutor while I learned from grocery receipts. Small meant I did not look too long at the front door when it opened. Small meant I did not speak unless someone needed a plate, a towel, a coffee refill, or a body to blame. Mrs. Patterson used to say I had a servant's heart. She said it like a compliment. The first time I heard it, I was around 10. She had invited women from her charity committee over for lunch. They were raising money for children in need, which would have been touching if one of those children in need had not been washing the lettuce in the kitchen. I wore a plain gray dress and stood near the counter, while Donna served chicken salad on little croissants. I had made the chicken salad. Of course. But Donna carried it out, like she had personally wrestled the chicken in the backyard. One of the women peeked into the kitchen and said, "Oh, who is this sweet girl?" Donna smiled that public smile. "This is Brianna. She helps me around the house." Such a servant's heart. The women all smiled at me like I was a well-trained golden retriever. I remember feeling proud for about 5 seconds. That is how badly I wanted approval. If Donna had told those women I was good at scrubbing a toilet, I might have stood taller. That was how hungry I was for any word that sounded warm. But later, when the women left and I was clearing plates, I dropped a fork. Just one fork. It clattered against the floor. Donna's face changed. "Careful, Brianna. A servant's heart does not mean servants' hands are allowed to be careless." There it was. The compliment had a leash attached. That was how they taught me. Not all at once. Not in one big speech. They fed it to me in small bites until I swallowed the whole thing. I was not mistreated. I was useful. I was not excluded. I was humble. I was not being denied a life. I was learning my place. And if I ever felt hurt, well, that was my fault too. "You are too sensitive," Donna would say. "You are ungrateful." Gerald would say, "You make everything awkward." Brandon would say, if I looked sad while carrying his laundry. By the time I was a teenager, I had become a professional at hiding my own face. I learned not to cry where anyone could see me. Crying annoyed Gerald. He said it was manipulative. Donna said it made my eyes puffy and unpleasant. Brandon said it was weird. So I cried in the basement with the water running in the laundry sink. Because running water covered the sound. That was my first real privacy. Not a bedroom door. Not a journal. A faucet. When I was 15, I finally asked the question that had lived in my chest for years. It was late afternoon. Donna was in the living room with a Pottery Barn catalog in her lap. She loved catalogs. She circled rugs and lamps and throw pillows, as if the right combination might make her a decent human being. I had just finished mopping the hardwood floors. My hands were dry from bleach, and my knees hurt from scrubbing under the sideboard. "Mrs. Patterson?" She did not look up. "What? Why am I different from Brandon?" Her pen stopped. For a second, I thought maybe she did not hear me. Then she lifted her eyes. "Different how?" I should have stepped back. I should have said never mind. But once a question has been trapped inside you for years, sometimes it pushes its way out before fear can stop it. "Why does he get to go to school? Why does he get new clothes? Why does he sit with you and Mr. Pyden? Patterson at dinner?" My voice got smaller as I spoke. "Why do I have to stay in the kitchen?" Donna closed the catalog slowly. That was never good. She looked at me for a long moment. Not angry exactly. Worse. Calm. Like she had been waiting for me to give her a reason to remind me who I was. "Brianna," she said. "Some children are born to be loved. And some children are born to help others." I stared at her. She said it so smoothly. No shame. No hesitation. Not even a blink. "You are the second kind." The room felt very still. I had expected many answers. Maybe she would say I was difficult. Maybe she would say I had problems. Maybe she would say Brandon was older. Or smarter. Or needed more. But this was different. She was not talking about behavior. She was talking about my whole existence. "You mean I was born to work?" I asked. She sighed, as if I were making her explain something very simple. "I mean you have a purpose. You should be grateful you know it. Many people spend their whole lives searching for their purpose. Well, lucky me. Some girls got sweet 16 parties. I got a life sentence with a motivational quote attached. I stood there holding the mop handle, trying to understand how a person could say something that cruel while sitting beside a vase of fresh tulips. But Brandon's purpose is different? I asked. Her face hardened. Do not bring Brandon into this. Of course not. Brandon was never to be brought into anything unpleasant. He was to be protected from noise, shoadis, consequences, and apparently reality. Donna picked up her catalog again. This conversation is over. That meant I was supposed to leave. I walked back to the kitchen, rinsed the mop, wrung it out, and returned it to the closet. My hands moved automatically. My mind stayed in the living room with those words. Some children are born to be loved. Some children are born to help others. You are the second kind. That night, I sat on my mattress in the basement and looked into the cracked mirror above the laundry sink. The reflection was dim because the bulb overhead flickered when the furnace kicked on. I studied my face, the way a person studies a strange letter. My eyes were green. Donna's were pale blue. Gerald's were brown. Brandon had brown eyes too. The kind Donna called warm, whenever she wanted to praise him for having facial features. My hair was dark chestnut. Theirs was sandy brown or blonde. My chin, my nose, my mouth, none of it matched them. I had noticed those things before, but I had never let myself think about them for too long. Questions were dangerous. Wondering was dangerous. Wanting the truth was dangerous. So I did what frightened children do when they have no safe adult to run to. I blamed myself. Maybe I really was different in a way I could not see. Maybe I had been born wrong. Maybe Donna and Gerald had taken me in out of kindness. And the price of that kindness was obedience. Maybe love was something people earned. And I had not earned enough. That belief settled into me quietly. It changed the way I stood, the way I spoke, the way I accepted leftovers without complaint, the way I watched birthday candles from the doorway instead of asking why no one ever lit any for me, the way I apologized when someone bumped into me. I became loyal to the story that was hurting me. That is what people do not always understand about emotional control. You do not need chains when you can make a person believe the cage is where she belongs. You do not need to guard every door when you have already taught her that the world outside will not want her. Gerald reinforced it in his own way. You have no papers? He told me more than once. No identification. No record anyone would care about. Without us, you are nobody. He said it like a fact, not a threat. That made it worse. A threat can be challenged. A fact feels like weather. Donna added the softer version. We gave you a home. We kept you safe. You would not survive out there. You should be thankful. And Brandon, without trying very hard, confirmed it every day. He looked through me. He stepped around me. He called me when he needed something, and forgot me when he did not. If the person who was supposed to be my brother could ignore me that easily, then maybe I really was not worth seeing. By the time I reached my early 20s, I no longer dreamed about leaving. I dreamed smaller. A quiet morning. A full plate. A pillow that did not smell like mildew. A day without being corrected. A chair at the table. Though I never admitted that one out loud. Not even to myself. The strange thing is, I was not weak. I worked from before sunrise until late at night. I carried laundry baskets up and down stairs. I scrubbed floors until my shoulders burned. I memorized schedules, managed groceries, cooked meals, and kept that whole house running while everyone else pretended it ran on money and good breeding. But strength does not always feel like courage when nobody names it for you. Sometimes strength looks like surviving one more day without falling apart. And for a long time, one more day was all I thought I deserved. The first time I let myself want more, life punished me by handing me a wedding invitation. Not mine. Of course. Let's not get carried away. It was Brandon's. Brandon Patterson, the golden son of Fairfield County. The boy who could leave dirty socks on a Persian rug and still be described as promising, was getting married to Victoria Whitmore. Victoria was beautiful, in the way women from old money families are beautiful. Calm hair, calm voice, calm posture. Even her eyebrows looked like they had a trust fund. She was blonde, polished, educated, and polite enough that you almost forgot she had grown up in a world where people said things like, the summer house, without laughing. Her father was Richard Whitmore, the head of Whitmore Properties, a real estate company that owned more buildings than most people had coffee mugs. Everyone in Connecticut society seemed to know his name. Gerald certainly did. The first time Brandon brought Victoria home, Gerald shook her hand with both of his, which was how I knew money had entered the room. From that day on, the Patterson house changed. Not for me. Obviously. I still slept in the basement and scrubbed the same toilets. But upstairs, everything became brighter, louder, and more desperate. Donna started ordering flowers like she was preparing for a royal visit. Gerald started wearing his better suits to dinner, which was funny because the only people at dinner were his wife, his son, and the invisible girl clearing plates. The wedding was set for a Saturday in late spring at the Ritz-Carlton in White Plains. 200 guests. A live orchestra. A 5-tier cake from a bakery in Manhattan. White roses. Crystal chandeliers. Imported champagne. And a bill so large, it probably needed its own chair at the reception. Richard Whitmore was paying for most of it. Gerald called that generous. I called it the most expensive trap anyone had ever gift-wrapped. At first, I thought maybe the wedding would change something for me. That sounds foolish now. But hope does not always arrive with common sense. Sometimes it walks in barefoot, carrying a laundry basket, saying, maybe this time? For 6 months, I helped with the planning. I addressed invitations in my neatest handwriting because Donna said the calligrapher was overpriced, which was rich coming from a woman who once spent more on throw pillows than I had seen in cash. I organized RSVP cards. I picked up dry cleaning. Esteemed table linens. I called florists. Confirmed appointments. Sorted seating charts. Wrapped favors. And wrote names on place cards until my fingers cramped. I knew every detail of that wedding. I knew which guests were allergic to shellfish. I knew which cousins could not sit together because of a fight over a beach house in Nantucket. I knew Victoria's mother preferred garden roses over peonies. I knew Brandon wanted shrimp cocktail at his table because, according to him, people remember the food? People remember other things too. Brandon. But that lesson was still on its way, somewhere in those months. I made the mistake of imagining myself there as a person instead of a worker. I pictured a simple dress. Maybe Leonor. Nothing flashy. I imagined standing near the back of the family photo. Not in the center. Just included. I imagined Brandon introducing me to someone as his sister. I did not need a speech, a toast, or a spotlight. I would have settled for my name spoken without embarrassment. That was the size of my dream. Small enough to fit in a coat pocket. 3 weeks before the wedding, Donna called me into the kitchen. She was sitting at the marble island with a folder open in front of her. Her nails were painted pale pink, and her wedding planner binder had color-coded tabs. Donna loved color-coded tabs. They gave her the illusion of a soul with structure. "We need to discuss your role," she said. My heart lifted before I could stop it. "Mirole?" "Yes." I wiped my hands on a dish towel. "Am I supposed to walk with the bridesmaids?" Donna looked up at me. Then she laughed. Not loudly. Not cruelly in the obvious way. It was worse than that. It was a small laugh. Like I had misunderstood something everyone else already knew. "No. Brianna." I stood very still. "You'll be helping with service?" she said. "Passing champagne. Making sure guests have what they need. Keeping things moving." The kitchen seemed to tilt a little. "You want me to work at Brandon's wedding?" Her smile tightened. "Don't be dramatic. It's not work. It's helping." There it was again. That Patterson magic trick. Take the word serving, put a ribbon around it, and call it helping. "But I'm part of the family," I said. The words came out so quietly, I almost hoped she had not heard them. She heard them. Her face changed. Not much. Donna never liked to waste expression unless she had an audience. But her eyes sharpened. "Brianna, sweetheart, you know how you are. That sentence was always the beginning of an insult, wearing Sunday clothes. You're awkward in groups, she continued. You get nervous. You don't know how to talk to people in our circle. If we put you in a bridesmaid dress and stood you up there, guests would ask questions. Do you want that? Do you want people whispering during Brandon's ceremony? No. Do you want to embarrass him on the most important day of his life? No. Mrs. Patterson. Then be useful. Useful. That word again. The family hymn. I nodded, because nodding was safer than crying. And crying was safer than answering. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I found the final wedding invitation list on Donna's desk. I knew I should not look. I also knew I would. The paper was thick, cream-colored, and expensive enough to make a normal envelope feel underdressed. Names were arranged by family group. Mr. Gerald Patterson, Mrs. Donna Patterson, Mr. Brandon Patterson. No Brianna, not under family, not under attendants, not under guests, nowhere. I sat in the hallway holding that paper while the house made its usual nighttime sounds. Pipes settling, refrigerator humming, Gerald coughing once behind his bedroom door. Upstairs, Brandon slept like a man whose life had never asked him for interest. I should have been used to it. That is what I told myself. I had not been invited to dinners. I had not been included in vacations. I had not been seated at birthday tables or Christmas photos. So why did this hurt differently? Because weddings are public. A family can mistreat you in private and still pretend things are complicated. But a wedding takes private truth and prints it on cream paper. And there it was. I was not forgotten. I was excluded on purpose. The rehearsal dinner came the night before the wedding. It was held at the Greenwich Country Club, on a terrace overlooking a golf course, so green it looked personally funded by God and several hedge funds. The tables were covered in white cloths. The glasses sparkled. The guests arrived in tailored suits. Silk dresses, pearls, diamonds, and the easy confidence of people who had never wondered whether they were allowed to sit down. I wore black. Donna had chosen the dress herself. Plain, knee-length, with a white apron tied around my waist. You look professional, she said, adjusting my collar. Professional. Another pretty word. Remember, she added, her voice low enough that only I could hear. Smile. Do not speak unless spoken to. And stay invisible. Stay invisible. At least that one was honest. I carried a silver tray of champagne flutes through the crowd. People took glasses without looking at my face. Some said thank you. Most did not. I moved between them like part of the catering equipment. Then Victoria saw me. She was standing near the railing, her engagement ring flashing under the soft outdoor lights. She looked genuinely pleased to see me, which startled me so much. I nearly spilled champagne on a man discussing municipal bonds. Brianna, she said. You're Brandon's sister, right? The word sister hit me so hard I forgot how to answer. Yes, I said. Then, because training is hard to kill, I added. Mom? Victoria frowned a little. Why are you serving? Before I could speak, Donna appeared beside me so fast she should have been given a speeding ticket. Oh. Brianna likes to help, Donna said brightly. She's always been shy, happier in the background. Victoria looked at me, not past me, at me. For 1 second, I saw a question in her face. Then the moment passed. Someone called her name, and she turned away. I kept moving, but something had shifted. A stranger had asked the question no one in that house ever allowed me to ask. Why was I serving? I was still thinking about it when I noticed Richard Whitmore watching me from across the terrace. He stood near the railing with a glass of scotch in his hand. Tall, gray-haired, well-dressed. The kind of man who looked like he had signed contracts worth more than neighborhoods. But he was not looking at me, the way wealthy guests usually looked at servers. He was staring. Not rude staring. Not dismissive staring. Shock and staring. His face had gone pale. I lowered my eyes and tried to move away. But he approached. Excuse me, he said gently. I stopped. Yes. Sir? What is your name? Brianna. Sir. He repeated it softly, Brianna. The way he said my name made my skin prickle. Then he asked the strangest question anyone had ever asked me. Do you know who your mother is? For a moment, the terrace sounds faded. The laughter. The glasses. The soft music from inside the club. All of it seemed to step back. My mother? I said. He swallowed. His hand tightened around his glass. Your birth mother. I did not know what to say. No one had ever used those words with me before. Birth mother. As if there might be another answer hidden underneath the one I had been given. I live with Mr. Five. And Mrs. Patterson. I said carefully. They raised me. Richard stared at me for a long moment. Something in his face seemed to break. Just a little. Then he stepped back. I'm sorry, he said. I did not mean to upset you. He walked away quickly, pulling his phone from his jacket pocket before he even reached the doors. I stood there with the champagne tray balanced in both hands, my heart beating too fast. Across the terrace, Donna was watching him, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear on her face. I kept my eyes on Donna's face just long enough to understand that Richard Whitmore had not asked a harmless question. Fear did not belong on Donna Patterson. Irritation. Yes. Disappointment. Daily. That tight little smile she used when pretending to like people she secretly ranked beneath her. Absolutely. But fear was new. And once I saw it, I could not unsee it. She stood near the terrace doors, with her champagne glass raised halfway to her mouth. Her fingers were wrapped around the stem so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Gerald moved beside her and followed her gaze toward Richard, who was now several feet away. Speaking into his phone with his back turned, Donna whispered something to Gerald. His jaw tightened. Then both of them looked at me. I had been watched in that house my whole life. But this was different. This was not the usual watchfulness of people making sure the help did not sit down too long. This was the look of people checking whether a locked drawer had been opened. I lowered my head and continued passing champagne because that was what I knew how to do. When in doubt, serve drinks. That could have been the Patterson family motto, at least where I was concerned. The rest of the rehearsal dinner moved around me like a beautiful machine. Guests laughed. Glasses clinked. Someone made a toast about love and legacy, and families coming together. I stood near the sideboard holding a tray, and wondered why the word mother suddenly felt like a door I had been told did not exist. Do you know who your birth mother is? The question kept repeating in my head. Birth mother. Not mother. Birth mother. That meant Richard thought there was a difference. That meant he thought there was something to know. Something I did not know. Something the Pattersons did not want spoken out loud. I tried to tell myself he was confused. Rich men were not immune to confusion. In my experience, some of them were downright committed to it. Maybe he had mistaken me for someone else. Maybe I reminded him of an old employee. A niece. A neighbor's daughter. Some person from a photograph in a drawer. But that did not explain Donna's face. It did not explain Gerald's sudden silence. And it did not explain the way Richard looked at me like he had seen a ghost who could breathe. Near the end of the dinner, Victoria came by again. She had changed from excited bride to concerned daughter. Her eyes moved from me to the terrace doors where her father had disappeared. Brianna, she said softly, did my dad say something to you? I stiffened. In the Patterson home, direct questions were traps. The safest answer was usually the smallest one. He asked my name. That's all? And he asked about my mother. Victoria blinked. Your mother? Before I could answer, Donna appeared beside us again. I swear that woman had the hearing of a bat and the timing of a bill collector. Victoria. Sweetheart, Donna said brightly. Your mother was looking for you near the dessert table. Victoria glanced at her. I was just asking Brianna if she was all right. Donna placed one manicured hand on my shoulder. To anyone watching, it probably looked affectionate. To May, it felt like a warning with nail polish. Oh, Brianna's fine. Aren't you, dear? Yes. Mrs. Patterson. Donna's fingers pressed slightly harder. She gets overwhelmed at events. Donna said, too many people. Too much noise. We try not to make a fuss about it. There it was. The little box she kept ready for me. She. Sensitive. Awkward. overwhelmed. Words that made my silence look like a condition instead of a command. Victoria did not look convinced. But she was too polite to challenge her future mother-in-law in the middle of the rehearsal dinner. Politeness is a lovely thing until it leaves someone standing alone with the person hurting her. After Victoria walked away, Donna turned her smile toward me. But her eyes had no smile in them. "Go help in the kitchen," she said. The kitchen was bright, busy, and filled with caterers who moved with the speed of people being paid by the hour and judged by rich guests. I stood near the service station and tried to steady my hands. A few minutes later, Gerald entered. He did not belong in kitchens. He believed kitchens were places where coffee came from and women disappeared into when they became inconvenient. Seeing him there made my stomach drop. "Brianna," he said. I turned. "Yes, Mr. Patterson?" He stepped close enough that I could smell the scotch on his breath. "What did Whitmore ask you?" "My name." "What else?" I swallowed. "He asked if I knew who my birth mother was." Gerald's expression did not change at first. Then his eyes narrowed. "And what did you say?" "I said you and Mrs. Patterson raised me." "That is not what I asked." His voice stayed quiet, which made it worse. I did not say anything else. He studied my face like he was searching for a lie. I had been trained not to lie. Not because they cared about honesty, but because they had made fear faster than imagination. Finally, he leaned closer. "You are not to speak to Richard Whitmore again unless one of us is standing beside you. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mr. Patterson. If he asks you anything personal, you say you are tired. You say you are busy. You walk away." "Yes, Mr. Patterson. And you do not repeat anything from our home?" "Not one word." "Our home." That almost made me laugh. Though laughing in that moment would have been a poor life choice. It was only our home when they needed my silence. The rest of the time, it was their house and my basement. Gerald straightened his jacket and walked out, leaving me beside a stack of dinner plates with my heart pounding. That night, back at the Patterson house, I went down to the basement and sat on the edge of my mattress without turning on the lamp. The house above me was full of noise. Brandon's college friends had come over after the rehearsal dinner. They were laughing in the living room, popping bottles, cheering like the wedding had already been won. Donna and Gerald were upstairs, probably discussing damage control in those low voices they used when something mattered. I held my hands together in my lap and tried to make sense of the day. A man I had never met had asked about my birth mother. Donna had looked afraid. Gerald had warned me not to speak. Victoria had noticed enough to ask whether I was all right. For most people, that might sound like a string of small events. For me, it was an earthquake. My life had always been built on one idea. The Pattersons knew everything, controlled everything, and the world outside their house did not know I existed. But Richard Whitmore had looked at me as if I did exist. Not as a housekeeper, not as some awkward girl Donna had to explain away. As someone. I stood and went to the laundry sink. The cracked mirror reflected my face in pieces. One line through my left cheek, another through my chin. I had looked into that mirror for years and seen exactly what Donna wanted me to see. A tired girl with no papers, no place, and no reason to expect more. But now I looked again. Green eyes, dark chestnut hair, a face that did not match Gerald, Donna, or Brandon. I had always known it. But I had trained myself not to care. Caring led to questions. Questions led to punishment. Punishment led to hunger. Locked doors. And apologies I did not mean but had to say. Still, Richard's question had done something dangerous. It had made the old questions stand up. Why did I have no birth certificate? Why had I never seen a baby picture of myself? Why was I not allowed to call them Mom and Dad? Why did Gerald say I did not exist without them? Why did Donna panic when someone asked who I really was? I pressed my palms against the sink and breathed slowly. For once, I did not push the questions away. The next morning was Brandon's wedding day, and I woke before my alarm. Not because I was rested. I had barely slept. I woke because my body knew it was expected to work, and expectation had become stronger than sleep. Upstairs, the house was still dark. I started breakfast. eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, coffee strong enough to satisfy Gerald's permanent disappointment, toast cut the way Donna liked it, which meant diagonally, because apparently rectangles were for people without standards. By 6, the dining room was set with the good china. By 6:30, I was in the guest room where Victoria's wedding gown hung in its garment bag. The dress was breathtaking. Even I had to admit that. Vera Wang. Hand-beaded bodice. Cathedral train. More delicate fabric than I had touched in my life. Donna had insisted on storing it at the house overnight, telling everyone it was safer there. I suspected she just wanted another chance to show it off. I steamed the gown carefully, keeping my hands steady, even though my mind was nowhere near steady. Donna appeared in the doorway, wearing a silk robe and rollers in her hair. "Do not touch the beadwork," she said. "That crystal is worth more than you. There are insults that shock you. And then there are insults, so familiar, they simply take a number and wait in line." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." She watched me for a moment. "When we arrive at the hotel, you will use the service entrance." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." "You will stay with the catering staff." "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." "You will not wander. You will not draw attention. You will not speak to Mr. Whitmore." There it was. I kept my eyes on the gown. "Yes, Mrs. Patterson." Her voice dropped. "This is Brandon's day. If you do anything to ruin it, I promise you will regret it." I nodded. But something inside me did not bow. It was small. Almost nothing. Not courage yet. Not even rebellion. More like a match being struck in a room where no one believed fire was possible. For 23 years, I had accepted every rule they gave me. That morning, standing beside a wedding dress, I was allowed to steam but not admire. I made a quiet decision. I would get through the day. I would watch. I would listen. And if Richard Whitmore asked me that question again, I was not sure I would walk away. I carried that quiet decision with me into the Ritz-Carlton, like it was the only thing I owned that no one had handed down to me. The hotel ballroom looked like money had learned how to wear perfume. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. White roses covered the arch near the front of the room. The chairs were lined in neat rows, each one tied with a satin ribbon, because apparently even chairs needed formal wear in White Plains. I entered through the service entrance, just like Donna had ordered. Not the front doors where guests were greeted with smiles and champagne. Not the lobby with polished floors and fresh flowers. I came in through the loading area behind the kitchen, past stacked crates, rolling carts, and staff members moving quickly with headsets and clipboards. A catering manager glanced at me and handed me a silver tray. "Champagne service," she said. "Keep moving. Smile. Don't block the photographer." That part made me almost laugh. I had spent my whole life being trained not to block the view. The ceremony began in the late afternoon. I stood near the back wall with a tray balanced in my hands while guests filled the room. Men in tailored suits. Women in bright dresses. Jewelry flashing under the lights. People who had known each other for years and had no idea that one of the groom's so-called family members was standing there dressed like staff. Gerald and Donna took their seats in the front row. Of course they did. Brandon stood at the altar in a black tuxedo, smiling like a man who had never cleaned a bathroom he personally destroyed. His hair was perfect. His shoes were polished. His cufflinks looked expensive enough to need their own insurance policy. When Victoria walked down the aisle, the room changed. Even I had to admit, she looked beautiful. Her gown moved behind her in a long train. And her father, Richard Whitmore, walked beside her with the steady dignity of a man trying not to cry in public. I watched him closely. At first, he looked only at his daughter. Proud, emotional, careful. But when he reached the front and turned to take his seat, his eyes found me again. He stopped for half a second. Nobody else would have noticed. I did. His face tightened. Not with anger, but with that same look from the rehearsal dinner. Recognition mixed with pain. Like seeing me had knocked the air out of him. I lowered my gaze before Donna could turn around. The ceremony continued. The minister talked about love, trust, family, and the sacred promises people make to one another. I stood in the back holding champagne. I was not allowed to drink, and listened to a room full of people honor family while mine pretended I was hotel staff. That kind of irony should come with a warning label. Brandon said his vows with a tremble in his voice. Victoria smiled through tears. Donna dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, giving a performance strong enough for daytime television. Gerald sat straight. Proud. Satisfied. Probably already calculating what the Whitmore connection would do for his social life. When the couple kissed, the room stood and clapped. I stayed where I was. The applause rolled around me, loud and warm. And for 1 second, I let myself imagine a different version of the day. One where I was seated in the front row. One where I wore a simple dress and held a small bouquet. One where Brandon looked over and smiled at me like I mattered. Then Donna turned her head just enough to catch my eye. Her expression said one thing: "Do not forget your place." So I remembered it. The reception began with music, champagne, and enough seafood to feed a small coastal town. I moved through the crowd, offering flutes to guests who barely looked at me. Some were polite, some were not. One woman asked if I could bring her the good champagne, as if I had hidden the secret bottle in my apron for personal use. I smiled and said, "Of course, ma'am." That was the job. Smile, while people assumed you had no inner life. I was refilling water glasses at the Whitmore family table when Richard spoke to me. "Brianna." My hands froze. He had said my name quietly, but it reached me like a hand on my shoulder. "Yes, Sir." He looked around, then lowered his voice. "May I speak with you privately for a moment?" I glanced toward the Patterson table. Donna was watching. Gerald was pretending not to, which meant he was watching even harder. "I don't think I should," I said. Richard's face softened. "I understand, but this is important." That word again. Important. No one had ever used that word about anything involving me unless I had broken something. "I was told not to speak with you," I said before I could stop myself. His eyes changed. Not surprised exactly. More like something he already feared had just been confirmed. "By Gerald and Donna?" I did not answer. I did not need to. He took a careful breath. "I won't force you. But I have something to show you. Just a photograph. You can walk away after that." I should have walked away right then. That was what every rule in my body told me to do. Return to the tray. Return to the kitchen. Return to being useful. Stay small. But the questions had been awake since the night before, and now they were not willing to lie back down. I followed him through a side door to a terrace overlooking the hotel gardens. The air outside was cool, and the noise from the ballroom softened behind the glass. For the first time all day, I was not surrounded by people needing something from me. I still held the serving tray with both hands until Richard gently said, "You can set that down?" I placed it on a small table. My fingers felt stiff. Richard reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out an old photograph. It was worn at the edges. The kind of picture someone has handled too many times to count. He held it carefully, almost respectfully, and turned it toward me. A young woman smiled from the photograph. She had dark chestnut hair and green eyes. My green eyes. She was holding a baby wrapped in a pale blanket. The baby's face was round and soft, one tiny fist tucked under her chin. I stared at the picture. I did not recognize the woman. I knew I did not. I had never seen her before, but my body reacted before my mind could explain it. My throat tightened. My chest felt strange. Not pain exactly. Not memory either. Something deeper than both. "Who is she?" I asked. Richard looked at the photograph for a moment before answering. "My sister," he said. "Margaret Whitmore." I repeated the name silently. Margaret. It meant nothing to me, and somehow it felt like it should. "She had a daughter," he continued. His voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. "A little girl named Brianna Ashford Whitmore." I looked up sharply. "Brianna?" He nodded. "With 2 N's originally. Though that does not matter right now. She was 6 months old when she disappeared from Stamford Hospital." The terrace seemed to go quiet. "Disappeared?" I said. "Taken," Richard said. "From the nursery. In the middle of the night." I stepped back. "No." It came out automatically. Not because I knew he was wrong, But because the truth was too large to stand near, Richard did not move closer. My sister spent years searching for her. Police, private investigators, the FBI, flyers, interviews, every lead, every phone call. She never stopped believing her daughter was alive. I gripped the back of a chair. What happened to her? To Margaret? I nodded. Richard looked down at the photograph. She died when her daughter would have been 5. His voice nearly broke on that last word. The doctors called it heart failure. I have always believed grief finished what her body could not carry anymore. I looked away toward the gardens. A wedding guest laughed inside the ballroom. Loud and careless. The sound felt wrong against what Richard had just said. I'm sorry, I whispered. Thank you. He took a breath. But Brianna, I do not think this is only a sad story from my family. I already knew what he was going to say. And still I was not ready. He held the photograph a little higher. When I saw you at the rehearsal dinner, I thought I was looking at Margaret again. Your eyes, your mouth, the shape of your face. I have spent 23 years imagining what my niece might look like if she were alive. I shook my head. No. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson raised me. Do they have adoption papers? The question landed hard. I don't know. Have you seen your birth certificate? No. Social security card? No. Any baby pictures? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Richard's expression darkened. But not at me. Did they tell you your documents were lost? I looked at him. His jaw tightened. Brianna, he said gently. That is what people say when there were never documents to begin with. My stomach turned. Every explanation Donna had given me started to crack at once. The fire. The missing papers. The homeschooling. The rules. The basement. Gerald saying without them, I did not exist. I pressed one hand to my mouth. Richard reached into his pocket again and pulled out a small sealed DNA kit. I can have this tested through a certified lab, he said. Legally. Properly. If I am wrong, I will apologize and never bother you again. And if you're right? I asked. He looked me straight in the eye. Then you are my niece? You are Margaret's daughter. And the people inside that ballroom are not your family. The words made the air feel thin. For 23 years, the Pattersons had told me who I was. A Borden. A helper. A girl with no papers. A girl lucky to be fed. A girl born to serve. Now a stranger stood in front of me with a faded photograph and a question powerful enough to split my life in two. I wanted to run. Not away from him. Away from the possibility that every ugly thing I had accepted might have been built on a crime. What would happen? I asked. If the test matches? I nodded. I would contact federal authorities. The old case would be reopened. You would get legal protection. We would establish your identity through the court. Legal protection. Identity. Words other people grew up taking for granted. Richard hesitated. Then added, there is also a trust. I blinked. A what? Margaret created a trust in her daughter's name before she died. She believed Brianna would be found someday. She wanted her child to be cared for. I almost laughed because the idea was so absurd. Cared for. I had spent the morning being told a wedding dress was worth more than me. How much? I asked. Though I barely understood why. More than $12 million. I stared at him. For a second, I thought I had misheard him. $12 million was not a number from my life. It was from lottery tickets, celebrity divorces, and homes Donna pointed at in magazines while pretending she had simple taste. Richard spoke quickly. This is not about money. Not to me. It is about the truth. It is about my sister. It is about you. Through the glass doors, I saw Donna scanning the room, looking for me. Her property had wandered off. My hands were shaking now. I looked at the photograph again. At Margaret's green eyes and tired smile. At the baby in her arms, who might have been me before the world turned cruel. I thought about the basement, the rules, the missing papers, the way Donna always flinched when anyone called me Brandon's sister, the way Gerald warned me not to speak. Then I looked at Richard. What do I have to do? His face changed. Hope and grief crossed it at the same time. Just a cheek swab, he said. It takes a few seconds. He opened the kit with careful hands. I stood still while he took the sample. It did not hurt. That surprised me. After everything I had survived, the thing that might finally free me was no more painful than brushing the inside of my cheek. When it was done, Richard sealed the tube and placed it back in the container. "I will call you as soon as I know," he said. 72 hours? Maybe sooner. 72 hours. 3 days. After 23 years of silence, the truth had the nerve to ask for 3 more days. I picked up the tray and turned toward the ballroom. Before I opened the door, Richard said my name again. "Brianna." I looked back, no matter what the test says. He said, "You are not nothing." I did not answer. I could not, because if I had spoken, I might have cried. And I still had champagne to serve. I stepped back into that ballroom with the taste of cotton still in my mouth and the strangest thought in my head. A cheek swab had just done what 23 years of begging, wondering, and hurting could not do. It had given the truth a way to speak. I picked up my tray from the terrace table and walked back into the noise. The band had moved into something upbeat. Couples were laughing on the dance floor. Waiters carried plates of steak and salmon. Brandon and Victoria stood in the center of the room, smiling for photographs like they had personally invented marriage. And there I was, holding champagne, wondering whether I had just handed a stranger the key to my whole life. Donna saw me first. Her eyes snapped to mine from across the room, sharp enough to cut ribbon. She leaned toward Gerald and whispered something. Gerald turned slowly, his face still calm for the guests. But his eyes were not calm at all. I had seen him angry. I had seen him cold. I had seen him smug. But now I saw something else. Panic. A small part of me wanted to enjoy it. Not much. I was still too scared for that. But I would be lying if I said there was not a tiny voice inside me saying, "Well, look at that." The king of the breakfast nook finally misplaced his crown. I kept moving. "Champagne?" I asked a woman in a silver dress. She took a glass without looking at me. "Champagne?" I asked an older man near the bar. He nodded and kept talking about property taxes. Everything around me stayed normal, which felt almost rude. My entire identity might have been falling apart. And the ballroom continued serving shrimp cocktail like nothing had happened. That is one thing people do not tell you about life-changing moments. Sometimes there is no thunder. No music. No dramatic pause. Sometimes you learn your whole life may have been a lie. And 10 seconds later, somebody asks where the restroom is. I made it through the reception by doing what I had always done. I worked. I refilled glasses. I cleared plates. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I stayed out of photographs. I listened without looking like I was listening. Gerald caught me once near the service hallway. His hand closed around my arm just above the elbow. Not hard enough to leave a mark in front of people. Gerald was too careful for that. He understood appearances better than kindness. "Where were you?" he asked. "On the terrace." "With Whitmore." I said nothing. His grip tightened. "What did he say to you?" "He showed me a photograph." Gerald's face changed so quickly that, for a second, the mask slipped completely. "What photograph?" "A woman holding a baby." His breathing slowed. That was worse than if he had shouted. "And what did you tell him?" "Nothing." "Brianna." My name in his mouth still had the power to make my stomach drop. I did not tell him anything. He looked toward the ballroom, then back at me. "You are coming home with us when this is over. You will not answer phone calls. You will not speak to him. You will not leave the house without permission. Do you understand?" There it was. Permission. His favorite word. Right after coffee. "Yes, Mr. Patterson." He released my arm and smiled at a passing guest, like he had just been asking me about the weather. I went back to work. But something in me had changed. I still answered him. I still obeyed in that moment. But the old certainty was gone. His threats no longer sounded like laws written in stone. They sounded like a man guarding a door that might already be opening. When the reception finally ended, I stayed behind to help with cleanup while the newlyweds left under a shower of sparklers. Donna kissed guests on both cheeks. Gerald shook hands. Brandon laughed with his friends. Everyone played their part. I collected empty glasses. Near midnight, Donna found me by the linen carts. You embarrassed us tonight, she said. I looked at her. I did? Her mouth tightened. Do not play dumb. That almost made me smile. I had been trained to be silent. Not dumb. There is a difference. Though nobody in that family had bothered to learn it. Mr. Whitmore asked to speak with me. I said, and you should have refused? I tried. You should have tried harder. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You have no idea what people like that can do when they get bored. They ask questions. They stir up trouble. And then they go back to their mansions, while people like us pay the price. People like us. That was rich. Donna had never included me in us until Danger showed up wearing a custom suit. At home, Gerald locked the front door behind us with a slow, deliberate click. Brandon was gone on his honeymoon, already on his way to Bali with Victoria. The house felt too quiet without him. But not peaceful. Never peaceful. Basement, Gerald said. Not go to bed. Basement. I went downstairs without arguing. The next morning, my alarm rang at 5. For one brief second, before I opened my eyes, I forgot about the DNA test. Then I remembered. And the basement did not look the same. The furnace still rattled. The concrete floor was still cold. The cracked mirror still hung above the laundry sink. But now every ugly detail seemed to ask the same question. What if this was never supposed to be mine? I went upstairs and started breakfast. Coffee, eggs, toast, fruit, some routine, same plates, some silverware. Gerald came down at 7 with his newspaper. Donna followed in a pale robe, her hair brushed smooth, her face tight from lack of sleep. Neither of them mentioned Richard. That was how I knew they were terrified. Patterson's silence was never empty. It was packed full of things they did not want, said out loud. Coffee is weak. Gerald said after one sip, it was not weak. Yes. Mr. Patterson. Make it again? I took the cup to the sink and poured it out. Before, I would have felt ashamed. This time, I looked at the dark coffee circling the drain and thought, this man may have stolen me from my mother, not raised me poorly, not misunderstood me, stolen me. The thought was so large I had to grip the counter. For the next 3 days, I moved through the house like a person living beside a ticking clock. No one else could hear. Every room felt different. Every command felt different. Every time Donna criticized a streak on the window or a wrinkle in a napkin, I saw Richard's photograph in my mind. Margaret Whitmore, green eyes, dark hair, a baby in her arms. On the second day, Donna cornered me in the laundry room. You seem distracted. I'm tired. You are always tired. That was true. Nice of her to notice. After only 23 years, she picked up one of Gerald's shirts and inspected the collar. If Mr. Whitmore contacts you, you are to tell me immediately. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. I mean it. Brianna, that family is not your concern. I looked down at the laundry basket. What if they think I am their concern? She froze. It was the first time I had ever said something like that to her. Slowly, she turned. What did you just say? Nothing. No, say it again. I could not. Not yet. Courage was in the room with me, but it was still standing near the door, deciding whether to come in. I need to finish the laundry, I said. Donna stared at me for a long moment. Then she slapped the shirt down on the machine and walked out. My hands were shaking, but I kept folding. That night, I lay awake on my mattress and stared at the ceiling. Richard had given me a phone number, written on a small slip of paper in blue ink. I had hidden it inside the lining of my winter coat. It felt ridiculous, hiding a phone number like treasure. But when you have owned almost nothing, even a chance becomes valuable. I had an old prepaid phone. One I had bought secretly with grocery change years earlier. I used it rarely and kept it hidden behind a loose brick near the laundry sink. Gerald would have taken it if he knew. Donna would have called it proof I was sneaky. Brandon would have borrowed it and somehow lost it. On the third night, just after 11, the phone buzzed. The sound was so small, but it nearly stopped my heart. I pulled it from behind the brick and looked at the screen. Unknown number. The message read, Results are in. Can you meet tomorrow morning at 10? Cafe on Main Street. Richard Whitmore. I sat very still. Results are in. 4 words. That was all. 4 words between the life I had survived and the life I might have lost. My fingers trembled as I typed back. I will be there. Then I deleted the message, powered off the phone, and hit it again. I lay down. But sleep did not come. Of course it did not. Sleep has manners. It does not interrupt a nervous breakdown unless invited. The next morning, I told Donna I needed cleaning supplies from the store. She barely looked up from her magazine. Be back by noon. I have guests coming for lunch. Yes. Mrs. Patterson. I walked out the front door with a grocery list in my hand and Richard's address in my pocket. The cafe was only a mile and a half away. I had walked farther carrying laundry baskets up and down stairs. So this was not about distance. This was about leaving as one person and maybe returning as someone else. The cafe sat on Main Street between a bakery and a small insurance office. It had brick walls, wooden tables, and the smell of fresh coffee. Richard was already there in the corner, wearing a navy suit and the exhausted face of a man who had not slept either. A manila envelope lay on the table in front of him. He stood when he saw me. Brianna. My name sounded different in his voice. Not like an order. Not like a correction. Like a person. What does it say? I asked. No small talk. No weather. No polite dance. I had spent 23 years waiting without knowing I was waiting. I could not wait one more minute for good manners. Richard nodded and slid the envelope across the table. I opened it with fingers that did not feel like mine. The paper inside was covered with lab language. Numbers. Charts. And words I did not understand. But one section had been highlighted. Probability of biological relationship. Greater than 99.9%. Conclusion. The tested individual is consistent with being the biological daughter of Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. For a moment, I could not breathe. I read it again. Then again. The words stayed where they were. Richard's voice was quiet. You are my niece. I looked up at him. You are Brianna Ashford Whitmore. He said. You are Margaret's daughter. The cafe blurred. The chairs. The windows. The people. The coffee cups. All of it softened at the edges. I had spent my life being told I was nothing. No papers. No place. No family. No right to ask. And now a piece of paper said the opposite. I did have a name. I did have a mother. I had been wanted. I had been searched for. Richard reached across the table. Not grabbing. Not demanding. Just placing his hand near mine. I have already contacted the FBI, he said. The cold case is being reopened. FBI. I repeated. Because my brain had apparently decided to work only one word at a time. Yes. We will do this carefully. Legally. You will be protected. Protected. Another word from some other world. What happens to Gerald and Donna? Richard's face hardened. If they bought you? Hid you? Or knowingly kept you without legal documentation? They could face federal charges. Human trafficking. Document fraud. Child endangerment. Possibly more. The room came back into focus. Federal charges. Prison. Court. Truth. For the first time, the Pattersons sounded smaller than what they had done. I looked down at the report again. At my real mother's name? Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. I had no memory of her voice. No memory of her arms. No memory of the day I was taken. But knowing she had existed changed something. Knowing she had loved me before, the Pattersons ever called me useful, felt like someone had opened a window in a room I thought had no air. Richard took a folded paper from his pocket and placed it beside the report. This is a copy of Margaret's trust documents. You do not have to think about this today. But you should know, she created it for you. She believed you would be found. I stared at the legal pages. The number appeared near the bottom. More than $12 million. A few days earlier, Donna had told me the crystal on Victoria's dress was worth more than I was. Now, my dead mother had left me more money than Donna could spend, in a lifetime of pretending she had taste. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt grief. Not just for myself, but for Margaret. For the mother who had looked for a baby who was sleeping beside a furnace in someone else's basement. For every year we lost. For every birthday she missed. For every morning I woke before sunrise, believing I had been born to serve people who had no right to own even 1 minute of me. Richard's eyes filled with tears. "I am so sorry," he said. I pressed my hand against the report. For once, I did not apologize back. I just sat there, breathing, while the truth settled into me, not gently, but finally. I walked out of that cafe with the DNA report folded inside my coat. And for the first time in my life, the street looked larger than my fear. Not safer. Not simple. Let's not decorate it like a church bulletin. But larger. I still had to go back to the Patterson house. I still had to walk through that front door. Answer to Donna's voice. And pour Gerald's coffee like I had not just learned he might have bought me from criminals. That was the strangest part. The truth had changed everything. But the dishes still needed washing. Nothing humbles a life-changing revelation like a sink full of breakfast plates. Richard wanted me to leave with him immediately. He offered to call protective services, attorneys, federal contacts, the whole alphabet soup of people with badges and briefcases. But the FBI had advised patience. They needed documentation. They needed timing. They needed Gerald and Donna comfortable enough to make mistakes. I had been uncomfortable for 23 years. Waiting a little longer for justice felt like a terrible bargain. But a bargain all the same. So I went back. Donna was in the kitchen when I arrived, standing beside the island, with her arms crossed. "You're late," she said. I looked at the clock. I was 11 minutes late. The woman had never remembered my birthday. But she could track 11 minutes like she worked for NASA. The store was crowded, I said. She looked at the paper bag in my hand. "Where are the cleaning supplies?" I had bought them. Bleach, sponges, furniture polish. Even on the morning, I found out I was an heir to more than $12 million. I still remembered the sponges. That is either trauma or excellent household management. Maybe both. Donna dug through the bag. Suspicious. "You seem different." "I'm tired." "You said that before?" "I'm still tired." That was the most honest thing I had ever said to her. Her eyes narrowed. But she let it go. Donna did not like problems she could not immediately organize, label, or blame on me. For the next week, I lived 2 lives. In one life, I was still Brianna Patterson, basement sleeper, breakfast maker, invisible servant, the girl who answered yes, Mrs. Patterson, and no, Mr. Patterson. In the other life, I was Brianna Ashford Whitmore, daughter of Margaret, niece of Richard, a missing child from a federal cold case, and living proof that the Pattersons had built their respectable life on something rotten. Those 2 lives did not fit inside one body very well. Every time Gerald looked at me, I wondered if he had known from the beginning. Every time Donna touched my arm in that controlling way of hers, I wondered if her hands had once received a stolen baby and called it charity. Every room in that house became evidence. The basement, the rules, the missing records, the locked cabinets. The way I had never been taken to a regular doctor unless absolutely necessary. Richard called me every evening from a secure number. He kept his voice calm, which helped. He told me the FBI had reopened the case from Stamford Hospital. He told me agents were reviewing old hospital footage, adoption fraud records, financial withdrawals, and documents tied to underground networks from the early 2000s. Then he told me the plan. He would invite the Pattersons to his estate in Greenwich, under the excuse of discussing business opportunities for Brandon. Gerald would never refuse that. If someone had told Gerald that shaking Richard Whitmore's hand required standing in a thunderstorm wearing a sandwich board, he would have asked what font Richard preferred. The invitation arrived on thick stationery 2 days later. Donna carried it into the breakfast room like it had been delivered by angels with excellent credit scores. "Gerald," she said, almost breathless. "Richard wants us at the estate on Saturday." Gerald lowered his newspaper. "For what?" "To discuss opportunities. He said he would like to talk about Brandon's future with the company." Gerald's face lit up in a way I had never seen when looking at me. "Well," he said, leaning back in his chair, I knew this marriage would open doors. Yes, I thought, just not the one you think. Donna spent 3 days preparing for that meeting. She tried on outfits, rejected shoes, complained about her hair, and asked me to steam a pale blue Armani pantsuit twice because the first time apparently lacked respect for the fabric. Brandon and Victoria were flying back early from their honeymoon. Brandon was annoyed at first, but Gerald told him Richard wanted to talk business, and suddenly Bali lost its charm. Nothing brings a Patterson home faster than the smell of money. On Saturday morning, Donna ordered me to come along. You'll help serve refreshments, she said, as if the Whitmore estate did not have staff. Of course, I said. She looked at me again with that same suspicion. Do not speak unless spoken to, I almost said. That rule has not worked out well for you lately. But I held my tongue. Timing matters. Sarcasm is fun. But federal investigations prefer patience. The Whitmore estate sat behind stone gates on 5 acres in Greenwich. The driveway curved past trimmed hedges, old trees, and a lawn so perfect, it looked like it had its own legal team. The house itself was enormous, 12 bedrooms, according to Richard. Though Gerald guessed 15 because he liked being wrong with confidence. This place must be worth 30 million. Gerald muttered as we pulled up. Donna whispered. Maybe more. Brandon gave a low whistle from the back seat. Victoria never mentioned it was this big. That was Brandon. Married into one of the wealthiest families in Connecticut, and still somehow felt underinformed. Richard greeted us in the main sitting room. He looked polished, controlled, and kind. If I had not known what was coming, I would have believed this was a normal meeting between families. Gerald? He said, shaking his hand. Donna. Brandon. Brianna? He said my name last, but not as an afterthought. Donna noticed. So did Gerald. The sitting room had high ceilings, old paintings, and furniture nobody should sit on while eating crackers. A housekeeper brought in tea and coffee, but I stayed near the doorway as Donna had instructed. That was my assigned place in any room, near enough to serve, far enough to deny. Victoria arrived a few minutes later, looking confused but polite. She kissed Brandon on the cheek, then looked at me with concern. I wondered how much Richard had told her. From her face. Not enough to spoil the shock, but enough to make her nervous. Richard invited everyone to sit. I remained standing. He noticed. Brianna, he said gently. Please sit down. Donna's head snapped toward him. Oh. She's fine, she said quickly. She prefers standing. I looked at Richard. Then I sat, not on the edge, not halfway. I sat fully in a chair with both feet on the floor. It was a small act, but Donna looked like I had set fire to the drapes. Richard opened a leather folder on the coffee table. I asked you here because there is something important we need to discuss. Gerald smiled. Of course. Brandon is eager to contribute wherever he can. I'm sure, Richard said. His tone was pleasant, but it had steel underneath it. This is not about Brandon's employment. The room shifted. Donna's smile froze. Richard turned slightly toward me. It's about Brianna. Gerald's face tightened. What about her? How long has she been part of your household? Donna jumped in before Gerald could answer. Since she was a baby. We took her in, raised her, gave her a home. A legal adoption? Richard asked. Of course, Donna said. That lie came out so fast it must have been waiting near the door. Richard nodded slowly. That is interesting. Gerald leaned forward. What is this? Richard removed a document from the folder and placed it on the coffee table. My attorneys checked county and state records. There is no adoption paperwork for Brianna Patterson. None in Connecticut. None in New York. None in New Jersey. Donna's face went pale under her makeup. Records can be incomplete, Gerald said. They can. Richard agreed. So we checked further. No birth certificate. No social security record issued at birth. No hospital record under the Patterson name. No school enrollment. No medical history consistent with a legally adopted child. The room went silent. Brandon looked from his parents to Richard. Dad? Gerald ignored him. This is offensive, Gerald said, standing. You invite us into your home and accuse us of what? Exactly? Richard placed a second document on the table. A copy of the FBI cold case file. Then a third. The DNA report. I am not accusing you of anything yet. Richard said. I am presenting facts. Donna's hands began to tremble. Richard pointed to the report. This test confirms that Brianna is a biological match to my late sister, Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. With a probability greater than 99.9%. Victoria covered her mouth. Brandon stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. That would have been touching if it had not taken federal paperwork to get there. Richard continued. My niece, Brianna Ashford Whitmore. I was abducted from Stamford Hospital when she was 6 months old. She was never found. Until now. Gerald's lips parted. But no words came. Donna whispered. No. Richard's voice hardened. Yes. Gerald pointed at me. She's lying. I laughed once. I did not mean to. It just came out. For 23 years. I had been too afraid to speak at the table. And now he was accusing me of orchestrating a DNA test, legal records search, and reopened federal kidnapping case. Apparently I had been very busy between laundry loads. I didn't even know my own name. I said. Gerald turned on Richard. You have no idea what you're doing. We helped that girl. We saved her. The door to the adjacent room opened. 2 federal agents stepped in. 1 man, 1 woman. Dark suits. Calm faces. Bad news with badges. The male agent held up identification. Gerald Patterson. Donna Patterson. I'm Special Agent Morrison with the FBI. This is Special Agent Chen. We need to ask you some questions regarding the disappearance of Brianna Ashford Whitmore and the illegal acquisition of a minor child. Donna began crying immediately. Not soft crying. Not regretful crying. Performance crying. The kind that checks whether anyone is watching. Brianna. She sobbed. Turning to me. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them we raised you. I stood. My legs shook. But I stood. You did not raise me. I said, you used me. Her face crumpled. We gave you food? You gave me leftovers? We gave you shelter. You gave me a mattress beside a furnace. Gerald's face twisted. You ungrateful little... Agent Morrison stepped closer. Mr. Patterson. I suggest you stop talking. That was the first time I had ever seen someone interrupt Gerald and survive it. Special Agent Chen opened a folder. We have obtained financial records showing a cash withdrawal of $15,000 in 2003. We also have recovered ledger entries from an underground adoption network previously investigated by federal authorities. A child matching Brianna's age and description was listed with a delivery date corresponding to the period she appeared in your household. Brandon stood up slowly. What? He said. His voice sounded young, smaller than I had ever heard it. Victoria moved away from him. Just a few inches. But enough. Gerald looked at Donna. Donna looked at the floor. There it was. Not confusion. Not innocence. Recognition. The thing they had buried had finally climbed out and taken a seat in the nicest room in Greenwich. Agent Morrison stepped forward. Gerald Patterson. Donna Patterson. You are being placed under arrest, pending charges related to human trafficking, document fraud, and child endangerment. Donna screamed my name. Gerald tried to move toward the door. But Morrison blocked him, with the ease of a man who had no interest in Gerald's opinion of himself. Handcuffs clicked around Gerald's wrists first, then Donna's. I watched in silence. I had imagined this moment might make me feel powerful. Instead, I felt steady. Not happy. Not healed. Just steady. The people who had made themselves giants in my childhood were standing in handcuffs in someone else's living room. And they looked very, very small. The sound of those handcuffs stayed with me longer than I expected. Not because it was loud. It was not. It was a small metal click in a room with expensive rugs, old paintings, and people who suddenly had no idea where to look. But after 23 years of hearing locks turn against me, that little click sounded like the world finally learning a new direction. Gerald kept talking as the agents led him toward the front hall. This is a mistake, he said. You have no proof. I want my attorney. Richard, you are going to regret this. Richard did not move. He stood beside the coffee table, one hand resting near the DNA report, his face pale but steady. "No, Gerald," he said. "I have regretted many things in my life. This will not be one of them." Donna was worse. She cried my name the whole way out. "Brianna, please, please tell them we loved you. Please tell them we took care of you. Please." I did not answer her. There are times when silence is fear, and there are times when silence is the door closing. That day, mine was the second kind. Brandon stood frozen in the sitting room after the agents took his parents away. He looked at the open front door, then at me, then at Victoria, as if waiting for someone to explain how the world had changed without asking his permission. "What is happening?" he said. Victoria had one hand pressed against her mouth. Her wedding ring caught the light. She looked less like a new bride, and more like a woman, realizing she had married into a crime scene wearing satin. Richard turned to her gently. "Victoria, I am sorry. I should have told you more before today." She shook her head slowly, still staring at Brandon. "Did you know?" she asked him. Brandon blinked. "What? Did you know she had no papers? No school records? No real bedroom? Did you know?" He looked offended, which was very Brandon of him. "I was a kid." "You are not a kid now." He opened his mouth, closed it, and looked at me. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost, but not quite. Because I remembered every time he had called me from the top of the stairs to bring him a shirt. Every time he introduced me as the housekeeper. Every time he stepped over the truth because it was easier than bending down to pick it up. "I didn't know it was like that," he said. I looked at him. "You lived there." That was all I said. Not because there was nothing else to say. There was plenty. I could have filled that room and half of Connecticut with what I had swallowed over the years. But some truths do not need decoration. He lived there. He saw enough. He chose comfort. Victoria took off her ring. Not dramatically. Not like in a movie. She just slid it from her finger and held it in her palm, looking at it as if it had turned into something dirty. "Victoria," Brandon said. "Don't." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I need space." That was the beginning of the end of their marriage. Though none of us knew how quickly it would happen, the next month was a blur of attorneys, agents, court dates, documents, and reporters parked outside gates like crows in rental cars. The story spread fast. Missing Whitmore baby found after more than 20 years. Wealthy Connecticut couple accused in illegal adoption network. Heiress raised as servant in Fairfield County home. Heiress. That word felt ridiculous attached to me. I still folded towels in perfect thirds out of habit. I still apologized when someone bumped into me at the grocery store. I still woke at 5 in the morning, even when nobody was yelling for coffee. But the world loves a label. And once the newspapers found that one, they held on tight. Gerald and Donna were indicted on federal charges connected to human trafficking, document fraud, and child endangerment. Investigators found evidence that they had paid $15,000 in cash for me when I was a baby. $15,000. Less than Gerald once spent on a watch, he said, was an investment. There is a special kind of nausea that comes from seeing your life reduced to a line in a ledger. My name had been recorded between a delivery date and a payment amount. Like I was furniture. Not a child. Not a daughter. Inventory. Richard sat beside me when the agents showed me the documents. He did not rush me. He did not tell me to be strong. I appreciated that. People say be strong when what they often mean is make your pain easier for me to watch. I was strong. I had been strong since before I knew the word. Now I needed to be honest. The trial lasted 4 months. I testified twice. The first time, I thought my voice would fail. I sat in the witness chair, looked across the courtroom, and saw Gerald in a suit without his old confidence. Donna sat beside him, smaller than I remembered, her hair less perfect, her face drawn tight. Their attorney tried to make them sound confused. Charitable. Misled. He asked if I had been fed. Yes, I said. Usually after they ate. He asked if I had been given shelter. Yes, I said. In the basement. He asked if Gerald and Donna had ever called me their daughter in public. I looked at the jury. When it protected them, yes. That answer made Donna lower her head. Gerald stared straight ahead. The prosecutor showed the jury photographs of the basement, the mattress, the storage bins, the index card with the rules still taped to the door. I had forgotten about that card until agents found it. Seeing it sealed in an evidence bag made my stomach turn. My childhood, laminated by cruelty, and entered into the record. Donna testified against Gerald near the end. She claimed she had been pressured. She said Gerald handled the money. She said she was afraid of him. She said she had always wanted to be kinder to me. That last part almost made me laugh out loud in federal court, which my lawyer later said would have been understandable but unhelpful. Gerald's attorney claimed he believed I had been abandoned. He said Gerald thought he was giving me a better life. A better life. The jury did not buy it. Thank God for common sense. Even when it arrives wearing sensible shoes and carrying a notepad. Gerald was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Donna received 12. When the judge read the sentences, I did not feel joy. That surprised me. I had imagined some grand feeling of victory, like music rising under my feet. Instead, I felt tired, cleanly tired. The kind of tired that comes after carrying something heavy and finally setting it down. The Patterson house was seized during the civil proceedings. The big colonial with the polished marble. The expensive refrigerator. The front windows facing the perfect lawn. The basement where I had slept for 23 years became part of a case file, then part of a settlement. Then someone else's problem. I never went back inside. I did not need to. That house had taken enough of my life. I was not going to give it one more afternoon just to stare at walls that had already heard me cry. Brandon's life collapsed in a quieter, uglier way. Richard terminated his position at Whitmore Properties immediately. It turned out Brandon's promising career had been mostly built on marrying the boss's daughter and showing up in clean shirts I had ironed. Without the Whitmore name behind him, doors stopped opening. Victoria filed for divorce 3 weeks after the arrest. I heard about it from Richard, not Brandon. She told her attorney she could not stay connected to a family involved in trafficking a child. I did not blame her. Honestly, it was the first sensible thing anyone in that marriage had done. The wedding debt became Brandon's problem. The honeymoon charges, legal expenses, apartment lease, car payments, all of it piled up. Gerald's accounts were frozen. Donna's social circle vanished faster than free samples at Costco. For a while, I heard nothing from Brandon. Then, 6 months after the sentencing, my phone rang. His name appeared on the screen. Brandon Patterson. My body reacted before my mind did. My stomach tightened. My hand went cold. Funny how a name can still knock on old fear, even after the person behind it has lost his power. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered, "Hello?" There was a pause. "Brianna." His voice sounded different. Thin. Tired. Stripped of that easy confidence he had worn like an expensive jacket. "What do you want?" "Brandon?" He gave a small, bitter laugh. Straight to the point. "I learned from your family. Efficiency was very important." Silence. Then he sighed. "I'm in trouble." I sat down at the kitchen table in Richard's guest house. A real table. With a real chair. Mine if I wanted it. That still mattered to me. "What kind of trouble?" "The apartment is gone. The car too. Victoria's lawyer is coming after me for damages. I can't get hired anywhere. Every time they search my name, the case comes up." He stopped, waiting for sympathy to fill the space. It did not. "I'm sorry that consequences have Wi-Fi now," I said. He exhaled sharply. "Brianna, please. I'm not calling to fight." "No. You're calling because you need something." Another silence. Then, very quietly, he said, "I need help." There it was. 23 years of coffee. Laundry. Cleaned bathrooms. Folded shirts. And invisibly labor. And now Brandon Patterson had discovered need. A little late. But personal growth is often rude like that. "How much?" I asked. "Just a loan. Enough to get me back on my feet." I looked out the window at the rose garden Richard's staff maintained. Spring had come back. Life had the nerve to keep growing. Brandon, I said, in all the years we lived in that house, did you ever help me? He did not answer. When Gerald grabbed my arm, did you step in? Silence. When Donna made me serve dinner from the kitchen doorway, did you ask why I wasn't sitting down? Nothing. When your friends called me the maid, did you correct them? He spoke then. Weakly. I didn't know what to do. You knew how to ask me for your blue shirt. That landed. I heard him breathe. I was selfish. He said. Yes. I was young. So was I. He had no answer for that. For a moment, I felt the old pull. The training. The reflex to fix. Serve. Smooth things over. Make someone else comfortable at my own expense. Then I looked at the chair beneath me. The table in front of me. The name on my bank documents. In the life I was building, one hard choice at a time. No, I said. Brianna, please. No. Brandon, I am not giving you money. I'm your brother. No, I said calmly. You were the boy who lived upstairs while I slept by the furnace. He started to cry then. Maybe for me, maybe for himself. Probably both. With a heavy lean toward himself. I have nobody, he said. I closed my eyes for a second. Now he knew the feeling. I hope you learn from that. I said, but I will not rescue you from the life your silence helped create. Then I hung up. My hand shook afterward. Boundaries do not always feel strong when you first set them. Sometimes they feel like fear wearing better shoes. But I did not call him back. And for the first time in my life, I let someone else clean up his own mess. I placed the phone face down on the table and let the quiet stay quiet. That may not sound like much, but to me it was a miracle with 4 legs and a flat surface. A table, a chair, a room where nobody was calling my name, like a command. No footsteps overhead, no furnace coughing beside my mattress, no voice asking why the coffee was weak, why the towels were folded wrong, why I had taken up too much space by breathing in the wrong corner. Just quiet. And for the first time in my life, the quiet did not feel like punishment. The inheritance was finalized 3 months after the trial ended. Richard's lawyers handled most of it, which was good. Because every legal document looked like English had gone through a bad divorce. Court orders, identity verification, FBI confirmation, trust, activation, tax planning, banking forms. If paper could reproduce, that law office would have needed a nursery. One morning, Richard drove me to a private bank in Greenwich. He wore a navy suit. I wore a simple gray dress I had chosen myself. With my own money. From a real store. Where no one told me I should be grateful for hand-me-downs. That still felt strange. Buying something because I liked it. Not because it was allowed. Not because it was left over. Not because Donna had decided it was too plain for her, but good enough for me. A banker led us to an office with dark wood walls, leather chairs, and a view of the street below. He was kind in that professional way bankers become when money enters the room wearing a legal name. He went over the trust details slowly. Investments, tax, responsibilities, long-term planning, security, charitable giving, education funds. Words I had heard rich people use while I refilled their water glasses, never imagining they would one day be spoken to me. Then he slid a document across the desk. Beneficiary, Brianna Ashford Whitmore. Trust value, $12,847,329.16. I stared at the number until the banker probably thought I needed medical attention. It was more money than the Pattersons had ever had in liquid form. More than Gerald's watch collection, Donna's furniture, Brandon's car, and every polished lie in that house combined. But the money was not what made me cry. It was the name, Brianna Ashford Whitmore. Not Brianna Patterson. Not housekeeper. Not helper. Not sweetheart when someone wanted to control me. My name, the one my mother had given me before anyone stole it. Shortened it. Buried it. And replaced it with obedience. Richard reached over and squeezed my hand. She never stopped hoping, he said. I looked at him. My mother? He nodded. Margaret believed you would come home someday. Everyone told her to move forward. She refused to confuse moving forward with giving up. I had no memory of Margaret, no sound of her voice tucked away in my mind, no image of her holding me except the photograph Richard had shown me. I did not remember her face leaning over my crib, or her hand on my back, or the way she might have said my name, but I had proof now that she loved me. Some people get years with their mother and spend a lifetime doubting that. I got a photograph, a trust, and a name, and somehow, it was enough to begin. Richard invited me to live at the Whitmore estate while I figured out what came next. At first, I resisted. Not because I did not want to go, but because accepting kindness felt dangerous. My whole life, every roof had come with a price. Every meal came with a debt. Every favor had a hook buried inside it. Richard seemed to understand. "You do not owe me performance," he said. "You do not owe me gratitude on command. You do not have to earn your room here." I almost asked him to repeat that in writing. The guest suite had windows overlooking a rose garden. Real windows. Not a cracked mirror above a laundry sink pretending to be scenery. The bed was large, clean, and soft. The first night, I sat on the edge of it for nearly an hour because lying down felt too bold. There were 2 lamps on the nightstands. Tfo. I could turn them on or off whenever I wanted. That may sound silly, but when you have spent years being told when to sleep, where to stand, and which doors you may open, a lamp switch can feel like the 4th of July. The bathroom had white towels stacked beside the sink. I kept waiting for someone to tell me not to use the good ones. No one did. For weeks, I woke up at 5 in the morning anyway. Habit is a stubborn old mule. The first few mornings, I got dressed quietly and went downstairs, looking for work. I found the kitchen staff already preparing breakfast. One woman named Carla smiled at me and asked if I wanted coffee. I almost said, "I can make it." Instead, I said, "Yes, please." She handed me a mug. That was the first cup of coffee anyone had ever made for me. I took it outside to the garden and sat on a bench while the sun came up. The air was cool. The grass was damp. Birds made noise like they had important business to discuss before breakfast. I cried into that coffee. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to let my body know the war was over. Even if healing was still unpacking its bags. Richard helped me find a therapist who specialized in trauma and trafficking survivors. At first, I hated therapy. Not the therapist. She was kind, patient, and annoyingly good at asking questions I did not want to answer. I hated realizing how much I had normalized. I thought freedom would feel like running through an open door. Sometimes it felt like standing in front of a menu and not knowing what I liked. Sometimes it felt like guilt for resting. Sometimes it felt like panic when someone raised their voice in another room. Sometimes it felt like waking from a dream where Gerald was calling my name. Then remembering he was behind prison walls and could not reach me anymore. Healing was not pretty. It was not a movie montage with soft music and perfect hair. It was paperwork. Nightmares. Awkward conversations. Learning how to say no. Learning how to say yes. Learning how to sit at a table without waiting to be dismissed. Eventually, Richard helped me enroll in a college preparation program. I was embarrassed at first. I was 23 and learning things other people had learned in high school. Algebra, essay writing, American history from actual textbooks, instead of half-heard television specials while dusting shelves. But I worked hard. That part I already knew how to do. The difference was, this time the work belonged to me. 1 year later, I opened an email from Yale University and saw the word accepted. I read it once. Then again. Then I put the laptop down and walked around the room because apparently my legs needed to discuss the matter privately. Yale. Me. The girl who had learned fractions by measuring flour in a kitchen where she was not allowed to sit. The girl with no school records. No diploma. No childhood. Report cards. No proud parents. At parent-teacher night. Accepted. Through a program supporting survivors of trafficking and abuse, I received financial support, academic advising, and more encouragement than I knew what to do with. The first time a professor said, "That is a thoughtful point, Brianna." I almost looked behind me to see who she was talking to. My dorm room was small. Smaller than the suite at Richard's estate. Much smaller than Brandon's old bedroom. But it was mine. My name was on the door. My books were on the shelf. My coffee mug sat on the desk, uninspected by anyone with a bad attitude and a silk robe. On the wall above my desk, I framed my acceptance letter. Beside it, I placed a copy of my birth certificate. Brianna Ashford Whitmore. Born in California. Daughter of Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. Sometimes I stood there and read it just to remind myself that paper could tell the truth too. Richard found a letter from my mother in the family archives. She had written it before I was taken. When I was still a baby. The paper was soft with age. And her handwriting leaned slightly to the right. She called me her darling Brianna. She wrote that I was loved. Wanted. Enough. I keep that letter on my nightstand now. I read it on mornings when the old voices try to come back. Because they do come back sometimes. That is another truth people need to hear. Being free does not erase every lie overnight. Some lies are like weeds. You pull them up. And a week later, one tries to grow through the sidewalk, but now I know what they are. Lise. I am studying psychology now. My goal is to become a therapist for people who survived homes that did not deserve to be called homes. People who were controlled, dismissed, used, silenced, or told they should be grateful for crumbs. I know what that does to a person. I also know it does not have to be the end of the story. I do not believe revenge is the point. Consequences are important. Justice matters. Boundaries matter. Some people should not get another chance to hurt you just because they share a last name, a holiday table, or a sad excuse. But revenge alone is too small. The real victory is building a life where their voice is no longer the loudest one in your head. Gerald once told me that without papers, I did not exist. Donna told me some children were born to serve. Brandon showed me what happens when comfort matters more than courage. They were all wrong. I existed before they found me. I mattered before Richard recognized me. I was loved before I could remember being loved. And if you are listening to this now, especially if you are older and looking back on years you spent being treated as less than you were, please hear me clearly. It is not too late to reclaim your name, your peace, your chair at the table, or your right to walk away from people who only value you when you are useful. Family is not proven by who demands the most from you. Family is proven by who sees you as a person when you have nothing to offer but the truth. For 23 years, I thought I had been born to stand in the background. Now I know I was never background at all. I was the story they tried to hide, and I am the one telling it. The greatest lesson from this story is that a person's worth is never decided by how others choose to treat them. Some people spend years serving their families, staying quiet, carrying pain, and believing they only deserve love when they are useful. But real love does not turn someone into a servant. Real family does not silence you, control you, or make you feel guilty for wanting respect. For older viewers, this story is a reminder that it is never too late to look honestly at the relationships in your life. Forgiveness can be powerful, but forgiveness does not mean allowing people to keep hurting you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set a boundary. Say no, and walk away from those who only value you when you make their lives easier. True family is not proven by blood, money, or appearances. It is proven by kindness, respect, honesty, and the way people treat you when you have nothing to give them. No one should have to earn a seat at the table by suffering in silence. You are worthy of dignity, peace, and love simply because you are human.